The knock came at 9:47 on a Tuesday night, and I knew before I even opened the door that my life was about to split into a before and an after. I was in pajamas, hair in a messy bun, a mug of chamomile tea going cold on the counter behind me. My daughter, Maya, was already asleep. It had been a good day, a quiet day, the kind of day I had fought 3 years to be able to have again. Then the knock, soft, almost apologetic. I looked through the peephole and my stomach dropped straight through the floor. It was Daniel, my ex-husband. The man who had promised me forever in front of 200 people, who had held my hand in a delivery room while I screamed our daughter into the world, who had packed a suitcase on a Sunday morning 3 years ago, and told me, without looking me in the eye, that he had fallen in love with someone else, and that someone else was his boss, Vanessa. And now he was standing on my porch, in the rain, crying. I want to tell you what those 3 years were like, so you understand exactly why my hands were shaking when I finally opened that door. When Daniel left, I was 31 years old, with a 2-year-old daughter and a part-time job that barely covered daycare. He didn't just leave the marriage. He left the mortgage, the car payment, and every promise he'd ever made me. Vanessa was 44, recently divorced, and ran the regional office where Daniel worked as a sales manager. She drove a white Mercedes and wore blazers that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I found out about the affair the way most betrayed spouses do, by accident and all at once. A text message that popped up on his phone while it was charging on the kitchen counter. Can't wait for tonight. Tell your wife you have a work dinner. I remember reading it 3 times before my brain would accept what my eyes were seeing. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He didn't even look ashamed. He looked relieved, like a man who'd been carrying a secret so long that finally being caught felt like putting down a heavy bag. I love her. I asked him how long. He said 8 months. 8 months of coming home late, of work trips, of a marriage that I thought was struggling but that he had already quietly ended in his heart. He moved out within 2 weeks. Into Vanessa's house, a beautiful colonial on the good side of town, the kind of house Daniel and I used to drive past and joke about winning the lottery to afford. The divorce was fast and cold. Daniel's lawyer, paid for with Vanessa's money, fought me on everything: child support, the house, even Maya's old crib, which he claimed had sentimental value. I was too exhausted to fight for things that didn't matter, so I focused on the one thing that did: my daughter. For the first year, Daniel saw Maya every other weekend, like clockwork. Then the visits got shorter, then they got rarer. Vanessa, I later learned, did not enjoy having a toddler from a previous marriage around on weekends that were supposed to be our time. By the 2nd year, Daniel was seeing Maya once a month. By the 3rd year, it was birthdays and Christmas, if that. I rebuilt my life alone. I took on extra shifts at the accounting firm where I worked, then night classes to finish the certification I'd abandoned when I got pregnant. I cried in my car in parking lots so Maya wouldn't see. I learned how to fix a garbage disposal from YouTube videos at midnight because there was no one else to call. Somewhere in year 2, I stopped waiting for Daniel to come to his senses. I stopped checking his social media. I started dating again, cautiously, and then not at all, because honestly, being alone with my daughter felt safer than being with anyone who might leave. By year 3, I had a promotion, a small savings account, and a life that, while not glamorous, was mine, fully mine, no one to answer to, no one who could blindside me again. And then came the knock. I opened the door, and Daniel looked like a stranger wearing my ex-husband's face. He'd lost weight. His clothes were wrinkled, like he'd been wearing them for days. His eyes were red and swollen. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Please, I need to talk to you." Every instinct told me to close the door, but something, curiosity maybe, or 3 years of unanswered questions, made me step aside. He sat on my couch, the same couch we'd bought together in our first apartment, and put his face in his hands. "Vanessa left me," he said, "6 months ago. She's marrying her personal trainer." I said nothing. I let the silence stretch, because I remembered what it felt like when no one gave me that same courtesy 3 years ago. He told me everything, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them in for months. How the relationship with Vanessa had been thrilling at first, expensive dinners, weekend trips to Napa, a life that felt like an escape from routine. How within a year, the excitement had curdled into something else. Vanessa, it turned out, had left her own husband for Daniel, the same way Daniel had left me for her. And a woman who leaves once, he learned too late, is often a woman who leaves again. She grew tired of him, critical of him. She compared him constantly to her ex-husband, a surgeon who'd bought her the Mercedes and the colonial house in the first place. Daniel had walked away from a family to become someone's rebound, and it had taken him 3 years to understand that. I lost my job too, he added quietly. Vanessa was my boss, remember? When we broke up, things got complicated at the office. I was let go 2 months ago. I looked at this man, once the center of my entire world, now unraveling on my living room couch, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not joy, not triumph, grief. Grief for the years he had missed with Maya. Grief for the family we could have been, if he'd only stayed and fought for us instead of running towards something shinier. "Why are you here, Daniel?" I finally asked. He looked up at me, eyes wet. "I want to come back. I want to be a family again. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. For Maya, for us." I sat with that question for a long moment. 3 years ago, I would have taken him back in an instant, so desperate was I to keep my family whole. But the woman sitting across from him now was not that woman anymore. "Where were you?" I asked quietly. "On Maya's 5th birthday, the one you missed because Vanessa had planned a couple's retreat that same weekend." He didn't answer. "Where were you the night she had a 103-degree fever and I drove her to the ER alone at 2 a.m. Where were you every single day for 3 years while I built a life out of the pieces you left behind?" "I know," he whispered. "I know I failed you both." "You didn't fail us, Daniel," I said. "You chose. Every single day, you chose Vanessa over your daughter. And now that she's chosen someone else, you're here asking me to be your safety net." He started to cry harder, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt nothing but calm. "I'm not angry anymore," I told him, and I realized, as I said it, that it was true. I spent the first year furious, the second year sad, and the third year finally free. I built something good here, Daniel. Maya has a stable home. I have a job I'm proud of, a life I chose for myself. I'm not going to tear that down, because your second choice didn't work out. So that's it? You won't even try? I'll never stop you from being a father to Maya," I said. "That door stays open, if you're serious this time. Really serious, not convenient because you're lonely serious. But as my husband, that door closed the day you packed that suitcase. It's not opening again." He left that night the way he'd arrived, alone, in the rain. But something in his posture was different, lighter, almost, like a man who had finally heard the truth out loud instead of the version he'd been telling himself. 6 months later, Daniel started showing up for Maya consistently. Every Sunday, without fail, he got a smaller apartment, a steadier job at a smaller company, a smaller life built without pretense. It wasn't a fairy tale redemption. He didn't become Father of the Year overnight, but he showed up. Again and again, he showed up, and slowly, Maya stopped flinching every time she said goodbye to him, wondering if it would be another month before she saw him again. As for me, I kept building. I got the senior accountant position I'd been working toward. I started dating again, this time without fear clouding every decision. And a year after that, knock on the door. I sat across from a man named Thomas. Kind, steady, utterly unimpressed by drama, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not taking Daniel back that night. I tell them the truth. I don't regret it for a single second. Because here's what 3 years taught me. Karma doesn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes it looks like a man standing in the rain, finally understanding everything he threw away, while you stand in the doorway of a life you built without him. A life that, for the first time, is entirely, unapologetically yours. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more emotional stories like this. I used to think strength meant holding a family together no matter what. Now I know strength sometimes means letting go of what's broken so you can build something whole. Daniel eventually found his footing, And I'm glad Maya has a father who tries now, even if it took losing everything to get him there. But I stopped needing him to complete my story a long time ago. The house Vanessa kept, the Mercedes, the Colonial, none of it kept her happy, and none of it kept Daniel either. Some people spend their whole lives chasing something shinier, only to realize too late that they burned down something real to get it. I think about that night often. The knock, the rain, the stranger wearing a familiar face, and I think about how close I came to opening that door all the way, to letting him back into every room of my life instead of just the one where our daughter lived. I'm grateful I didn't. I'm grateful for the woman I became in those 3 hard years, the one who learned to fix her own garbage disposal, who drove herself to the hospital at 2 a.m. and back, who built a career and a home and a sense of self out of nothing but stubbornness and love for her daughter. Daniel taught me, without meaning to, that some people will only value what they have once they've lost it and replaced it with something worse. I choose not to be anyone's consolation prize. I choose not to be anyone's safety net after their gamble fails. If there's one thing I'd want anyone listening to this story to take with them, it's this. Rebuilding your life after betrayal is not about waiting for the person who hurt you to come back and make it right. It's about becoming someone so whole, so complete, that when they finally do come back, and sometimes they do, you no longer need them to. I closed that door gently that night, not out of anger, out of peace, and I have never once looked back. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments what you would have done in this situation, and don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories.